Welcome to Invest Well, Be Well, a podcast for wiser investing and stronger living. I'm Rusty Vanneman, longtime investment professional, and I'm joined each week by my co-host, Robin Murray.
Thanks, Rusty. I'm a storyteller and journalist, and I am so excited to explore the ideas, insights, and people shaping the intersection of performance and purpose.
This podcast is for thoughtful investors and driven professionals who want to grow in their portfolios and in their personal lives.
We'll talk long-term investing, behavioral finance, personal development, and what it takes to live and work with intention.
So let's get started. Let's invest well and be well together.
This podcast is brought to you by Main Management, LLC. Since 2002, Main has been recognized as an ETF strategist that combines an institutional process with the personalized service of a boutique firm. Our guest today is Dr. Philip Pearlman. He's the founder of the Pearl Institute, which is a venture dedicated to inspiring resilience, fitness, and joy via long-term personal health planning and performance training. He's also the author of the Prime Cuts newsletter, which focuses on cultivating a healthy lifestyle, mindset, and identity. What a great interview, Rusty.
It was. Phil definitely brought the energy to this podcast interview. I wrote down a lot of different notes, and I think that I learned a lot. I feel like I'm doing a really good job in some areas, but he really stresses keeping it simple. And he kind of talked about 4 different areas that are really important, including, nutrition, being active, sleep and recovery, and then social relationships. And he really dives into each of them. But what really was neat is that he really emphasized the importance of keeping it simple. He also talked about, which you don't hear from a lot of people kind of talking about performance, is the importance of letting it go. I think there's a lot of wisdom packed in this interview.
Yeah, I loved it. And I think, there's so much information out there about how to stay healthy, how to stay fit, how to do all the things and perform well. And it's just an overload of information, and it's so hard to sift through. So I love that he just keeps it simple. It's very clear. There's really practical steps that you can take today. So yeah, I like his approach a lot.
Excellent. Well, let's get to it.
All right. Well, Philip Pearlman, welcome to Invest Well, Be Well. It's great to have you.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
So Phil, welcome to the show. We're excited that you're here. We do have an initiation right for the podcast. It's a carryover from our last podcast. And that is, we need a walk-up song to set the tone and tenor of this interview.
Absol outro, Kendrick Lamar. Pumpkin. That's Kendrick the one. Lamar.
Now we're pumped up. Now we're ready to go.
That's right.
All right. Nice.
All right. Well, Phil, let's talk about you a little bit. You've had a super fascinating career. You've been everything from a psychologist, a trader, fintech exec. Now you are the founder of the Pearl Institute. So for those who don't know you yet, how would you describe your journey?
Well, I've been involved with markets for, 30 years. Always was obsessed with, had a Daytech account with $5,000 in it way back in the day when Daytech was a thing. If you're young, look up Daytech. That was one of the first platforms, one of the first electronic trading platforms. And I was a psychologist. I became a psychologist, and I was naturally looking at sort of the behavioral aspect of the markets. I didn't take very good care of myself. It's been a long time. It's been a long, difficult journey. And I never could practice psychology because I really couldn't even take care of myself, just to be frank. So I got involved with markets. I got involved with a hedge fund. We were a behavioral hedge fund. That worked out great because I was coming from that angle. I was reading Kahneman and Tversky long before Danny Kahneman won the Nobel Prize in 2001 or 2003. And so I had that on lockdown. So that was my sort of approach into the markets on a professional level. Then I got involved with private investments and social media and worked in finance and worked in markets for 25 years or so. And about 6 years ago, in fact, the anniversary, I took my last drink August 6th, 2019. I got sober. I cleaned myself up. I started to get sort of in tune with who I am as a person and who I always was. I was always an athlete, but I got away from it. I gained a lot of weight. And I started getting in tune to that. And then I started to write a newsletter about my journal, Prime Cuts newsletter. And as I was writing that, it was like Auden, or one of those great writers once said, you write to find out what you're thinking. Well, what I started to realize when I was thinking was, this is what I was called to do, to help other people get themselves healthy, figure out what they really wanted to do, have joy in their life, and get back to who they always were. Maybe they got away from it. Maybe, adulthood is very, very difficult for all of us, even for people born with silver spoons in their mouth. We all have challenges, and we all have conflict, and we all have disappointments and all of those things. So we get away, we taxes and parenting and everything. So we get away from who we are. So this idea for me, it's really this idea of getting back to who we always were, our real identity. And so I quit finance. I left my last gig. I was a chief marketing officer at an asset manager, and I just, resigned, and I just created Pearl Institute, and I work with people. I do webinars. I work with people individually, working on either decision-making, executive, leadership and performance. Sometimes it's just health-focused. Those are the types of things I do. And it's really sort of coming full circle back from my graduate studies, because I always was like a helper person. I just never had the capacity to even help myself. And now that I have, I can help other people.
Bill, you've done so many things. I think you're a perfect guest for Invest Well, Be Well. Our tagline is wiser investing and stronger living. And you have introduced a concept called fitness alpha. When did this really take shape for you? It sounds like you probably touched upon it. Was there a personal tipping point?
Yeah, I started to notice it myself. So the idea of fitness alpha is that we actually, and I'm just assuming that our audience is finance savvy and market savvy. The idea of alpha is that, it's outsized gain or outsized losses, but in this case, outsized gain relative to a benchmark. And I started finding that as I was getting healthier and healthier, lost a bunch of weight, improving my cardiovascular capacity and improving my muscle mass, I was finding that I was performing better, whether it was consulting, whether it was professionally in any aspect, relationships improving in my private life. All aspects of my life were improving in the present. So when we think about getting healthy, we usually think about sort of the long term. You know what I mean? Like, hey, I want to be able to dance at my kid's wedding, or I want to be able to play ball with my grandkids one day. But there's also this present, it's multiple time frames. There's the future aspect, and there's also the present aspect. And our performance improves as we get healthy. And so it's like fitness alpha. And then the tagline is get healthy, perform better. And as I started looking into it more deeply, I started finding that there was all of this research that supported this, like metabolic health research, metabolic health and cognitive functioning, metabolic health and executive functioning, to go back to the Kahneman and Tversky stuff in the decision-making literature. We know on an empirical basis that we make better decisions the healthier we get. And we have more stress tolerance, right? And we have more ability to focus. So that's another cognitive one. We have more emotional control and emotional regulation. So think about these things that I'm mentioning right now, right? Decision-making, stress tolerance, emotional control, all of these things, ability to focus and ability to attend, self-confidence. Think about that for a second. If you are involved with markets are very stressful. Markets are very difficult on our executive functioning, our decisioning apparatus. If you are involved with markets and you're getting yourself healthy and you're improving yourself in all of these areas of functioning, well, by definition, your market participation, your ability to navigate markets will improve. And so I found that on a personal level, relationships, my market performance, right? Everything's really improved. My self-confidence and how, if you're running a fund or if you're an advisor, especially, it's a social endeavor, right? You have clients, you have prospective clients. When you go to a meeting with a prospective client, you're feeling very self-confident and you're feeling a high level of agency, you're going to perform better in that meeting. And when you're very healthy, and this is just, may not be politically correct to say, but if you're really, really healthy and you're exuding that, your social perception improves. So in other words, the way that others perceive you improves. And so all of these aspects, and I just, it was an organic thing because I noticed my own performance improving. But then as I started to conceptualize it and started looking at the research, I was like, oh my God, checks that box. Oh my God, checks that box. Oh my God, checks that box.
So what does that look like for you? What does Fitness Alpha look like in your daily routine that supports your mental clarity, as you said, your emotional regulation? How do you do that for yourself?
Well, for me, so it's a great question. I'm a simpleton. When I was young and I was complicated, life was very complicated. And, I was searching and I was into like deep philosophy and metaphysics and Jung and all of that stuff. And it was like this, it was like everything was a rabbit hole. And then I got old and I got really dumb and I just simplified everything. And so for me, fitness is made up of 4 elements. Like back in the day, the Egyptians had 4 elements. The Egyptians and the Greeks had 4 elements of the physical universe, right? Earth, wind, fire, water. I have 4 elements of health, and I keep it that simple. So I don't get into like all these buzzwords, neuroplasticity and mitochondria. So, sometimes I read about them, to be honest, but I really don't incorporate them. I incorporate 4 stupid, simple elements. What we put into the only body that we're ever issued, right? Our nutrition. That's number 1. Number 2, body movement, how we move our body. Number 3, sleep and rest, how we recover and how we rejuvenate. And then number 4 is sort of the one that people don't think about when they think about their health. And that is our closeness to other people, our relationships, loving and allowing ourselves to be loved.
That's awesome.
That's it. That's all. That's it. I mean, there's details. Like there's, from a nutrition point of view, you're going to get 80% of the way there if you stop eating garbage that comes in a box. The next 20% is more involved. But, if you cut out cereals and a lot of, processed foods and a lot of cakes and sugar added foods, that gets you like 75, 80% of the way there. In terms of movement, there's 2 types. There is aerobic, going for a run, going for a swim, going for a bike. And then there's anaerobic, and that is just building your muscle tone and et cetera for each one. So very simple framework. Very simple in practice. I mean, I just move my body every day. I don't really worry. I don't have this crazy protocol of like, oh, well, it's an A day or a B day. I just move every day. I go for a run. I do some push-ups. I just keep active like that.
Well, now just to follow up on that. So when it comes to activity and sort of physical fitness, what are some of the biggest misconceptions people have about physical fitness and cognitive performance?
Well, I will tell you the number one, I work with a very high level people, like people who are functioning at a very high level. I work with people from the same community. I work with people in finance, and I work with CEOs, and I work with entrepreneurs who have had large exits, and I work with hedge fund managers. And here's the thing that I find, you would never think this is the case, but I find overtraining and injury is the number one. I see it over and over again with hyper successful people because they are just in this one mode. It's go, go, go. And they are not sort of aligning themselves with that third element of health, which is the rest, sleep, recuperation axis. They lose that. So people come to me. They're 60 years old. They've run multiple marathons. They've done triathlon. They've sold multiple businesses. They have 50 in the bank. They have $50 million in the bank or more. And they come to me and they have a bad elbow and they have a bad knee and they have multiple injuries and they don't know why they have them. And then we start talking about their protocol, their exercise protocol, and it becomes very obvious why. Because they're doing way too much. They're not listening to their body. They're not resting. And every time they go out, they're exercising at this level that is like, hey, I have to beat my personal best every time. They're hyper competitive. Serves them very well in the business world. And especially as they're aging, it starts to work against them in the exercise realm.
I totally get it. I mean, just speaking from my own experience and just being an achiever is that I always wanted to be the fastest guy in the gym on the treadmill. And you know what? I finally learned to let that go. And you know what? I'm not hurt. I haven't been in knock on wood. I haven't been injured in a while. All right, Phil. So what kind of physiological changes, we could talk neurochemical, hormonal, or whatever, do you think are the most underrated and how they impact resilience and adaptability?
Well, metabolic health is the simple, straightforward answer to that. I don't like going there, but I will go there for you. Okay. So we're talking about blood pressure, triglyceride, fat in your blood, cholesterol in your blood, body weight, and really, waist circumference relative to your height, your body's ability to process energy as you take it in. Like when you take in fat or carbohydrates, that's energy. Your body's ability to that's the definition of metabolic health. And so I would just say how healthy you are. And I hate to get into the weeds on any of this stuff because it obscures it. When we start talking about blood panels and our mitochondria and telomeres and heart rate variability, that's a new one that people love to talk about. It obscures the basic, simple, elegant truth that when we eat the right things, when we move our bodies, when we get sleep and rest, and I'll tell you, here's the difference, okay? It's the difference in this, okay? We have the phones, right? We know that inside these phones, there is a lot going on. There are chips, there are connections, there's like somebody was soldering, there are huge factories in China and other parts of the world that are putting together, there's 5 cameras or whatever, 3 or 4 cameras in there. There is a ton going on in this phone. But you know what? I don't care. I don't care about what's going on in the phone. And you know what? When a 5-year-old picks up this phone, Steve Jobs created this thing and it's pure genius. And one of the ways you know it's pure genius is because when a 5-year-old picks it up, they can start navigating it with their fingers and it's perfectly intuitive. And so I am talking about the difference between the technical people who create this phone and build it and the users of the phone. I think of myself as a user of my body. So I don't care that much about how it works underneath the hood. And this is a hot take, and people hate this take. But the reason that I say that is because I am a part of this health influencer crowd. And I love these guys. Huberman, Attia, all of them. I love them, but I also hate them because they get so technical that they lose 95% of the people. And where really what we want to be doing is we want to be explaining things in ways that people understand. Move your body, eat real food, eat a really good piece of fish, rest your body, and, love and allow yourself to be loved. Lean into your relationships. That's it. So when we get into all of this stuff, all of the ways that the chips and the form factors and the whatever, the camera and the how much memory and all of these things, I'm really not interested. I'm a user of the phone. I'm a user of this body. I know it feels really great to me. I know I am a scientist. So when I do something and it feels good and I feel great the next day, I repeat that behavior. So I'm a scientist and I'm the sole subject of this continuous scientific experiment. But I'm not a studier of the body. Like I'm never going to figure. And by the way, these influencers, they don't understand how our body works. They understand this much, and that much is so complicated that they can write 500-page books and they could do these 4-hour podcasts about it because we're so complex and there's so much disagreement. So if I'm going to embrace some crazy theory about how our body works, I'm not going to know I'm correct because there's another side to it that's an intelligent side. So I'm just kind of trying to learn, and then I'm trying to keep it stupid simple.
I love it. I mean, I I'm guilty again, man. I read those, listen to those biohackers. I got my Oura ring, I got my Garmin watch, but you just break it down to keep it simple. It's just one day at a time, incremental change. You don't have to think about the end goal. It's just one day at a time.
Learning that stuff is not bad. I'm not saying it's bad. I love it. I got Atiya's book right there. It's a great book. The concept of the 100-year Olympics, right? That you're in this Olympics to be healthy when you turn 100 and then drop dead. That's an awesome concept. But to get so deep into these ideas, like he's just a VO2 max freak. You know what I mean? I could feel myself. I could feel my cardiovascular system getting more healthy because I can run further and I can run faster. So I don't need to know what my VO2 max is every time I wake, every day. You know what I mean? Like I don't need to know all that technical stuff to know I feel great or I don't feel great.
All right, well, let's move into how this all relates to finance and behavioral finance. So you've talked about how behavioral finance discussions sort of stop short, right? They diagnose the problem, talking about your biases or what have you, but they don't offer solutions, right? What are we supposed to do about that? Can you talk about how some of those physical practices, those routines can really become solutions?
Well, listen, I really appreciate that question because, sometimes you go for an interview or you go on a podcast and the interviewers have a cursory understanding of where you're coming from. They didn't do their work, but that's a deep cut. So I know that like you guys researched, you did a little bit of research about me and you took a real look at like what I'm about and what I'm doing. And yeah, I have a real problem with the science of behavioral economics. It's a young science. And so things take a while to evolve. But, behavioral economics and behavioral finance is steeped in social psychology, right? Kahneman and Tversky were social psychologists. And that's not a knock on them. They're geniuses. I mean, I love them. But they were social psychologists. They were not clinical psychologists. And so formal economics, sort of traditional economics, efficient markets hypothesis, are normative theories. They really cover, well, this is the way people are supposed to act, right? This is the way a human is supposed to act in markets. A rational actor and utility theory. But really, we don't. We don't act anything like that. And so, Thaler came along and started evolving behavioral economics from the theories of Kahneman and Tversky. He was an economist, obviously, and still is, but he started evolving this and he moved from a normative theory to a descriptive theory. Hey, this is the way humans really act in the real world. We're loss averse, right? We're overconfident. We are biased in our thinking in 1,000 different ways. We love to confirm the things that we already believe. We look at things that we're familiar with more sort of truth basis than other things that we're not familiar with. All of these bias and heuristics can be applied to the markets, and we do them all. We're horrible actors, and that is descriptive. What they don't cover is prescription. Is saying, hey, now what do we do about it? How do we begin acting better? Thaler did scratch the surface with nudge. He wrote that book, Nudge or Nudge. I guess if you're Jewish, you call it nudge. And if you're not Jewish, you call it nudge. But he started to go there. But I'm not going to go into a deep discussion of critique of why nudge is not a full clinical theory, a full prescriptive theory. But suffice to say, we don't have a real prescriptive model of how to change people, of how to say, hey, you're doing this. And so what I liken it to is like, let's say you were depressed and I was a psychologist and you came to see me and you came in and you sat down and you started telling me how depressed you were and all of the ways that you were depressed and I feel terrible, I'm a total failure or whatever. And I just looked at you and I said, hey, snap out of it. That'll be $400. And that's it. That's what sort of behavioral economics is doing. It's describing it, and then it's telling you not to do these things. And if you ever pick up a Barron's or you pick up a MarketWatch, you go to marketwatch.com, every time the market crashes every time the market gets killed, you see these behavioral economics articles, right? You see these articles about loss aversion and about how to properly build your personal portfolio relative to your risk tolerance. They're never telling you this at the top. They're telling you this after the fact. And that's because it's purely descriptive and purely reactive. So for me to get prescriptive, and where I believe that behavioral economics needs to go, is I believe that they need to begin adopting principles of clinical psychological models, right? So the clinical psychologists, they spent their whole lives trying to figure out how to get people to change. And they came up with some pretty good stuff, right? Regardless of the school, right? Whether you're cognitive behavioralist, whether you're psychodynamic, whether you're experientialist, they all just focus on how do you get people to change, right? So take, for example, if you're having trouble, if you're a hedge fund manager and you're going on tilt, you're losing money and you're having trouble selling losers, right? There's a clinical model that fits that very nicely. That's anxiety. That's loss aversion. Aversion is an anxiety term, right? You're averse to losses. So what do clinicians do? And I'm oversimplifying here, but what do clinicians do when people have a fear of something, right? Well, that's just called phobia. And what they do is they have these great empirically validated treatments for phobics, such as graded exposure. You're scared of a bridge? Well, we sit in the office and we talk about a bridge and your heart rate goes up. Then we do some breathing and your heart rate comes back down, but we're still talking about the bridge. Then we take a look, then the next week we take a look at a photo of a bridge. Your heart rate goes way up. We do those relaxation exercises. Your heart rate comes back down. Then we go for a drive. We drive over. I live, maybe 30 miles from the GW Bridge. So maybe we drive over the GW Bridge and we park in Fort Lee and we take a look at that bridge and your heart rate goes way up. So approaching, and I've actually worked with hedge fund managers in this exact way, talking about losing positions, taking very small losing positions and dealing with them and really building up a tolerance to losses and really sort of treating that loss aversion. That's where I think that we need to go. I think it's very obvious. And if I could just keep talking, I know I'm just talk. But if I could just say one more thing, it is not a coincidence. So there's this guy named Aaron Beck, who, it's very interesting that Beck and Kahneman both passed away within a year of each other. But Aaron Beck is the father, arguably the father of cognitive behavioral therapy. He was a genius. He was a psychoanalyst in the early days, and he rebelled from Freud and the post-Freudians to develop a more empirical model of clinical change. And he was a genius, and he developed a really rigorous empirical model of clinical change for disorders like depression and anxiety, and then also deeper disorders like personality disorder, like antisocial and narcissistic personality. A total genius. And it's become a school, cognitive behavioral theory and therapy. He and Kahneman and Tversky were both students of the cognitive revolution. And this is not a coincidence. In fact, both of them published their premier works, their stamp of genius, in the same exact year. So Prospect Theory was published in Econometrica Journal, 1979, and Cognitive Therapy for Depression, Aaron Beck, was published in 1979. So their lineage, there is such a natural pathway for behavioral economists to develop structured clinical theory and practice. It's not even funny. It just hasn't really happened yet. There are individual practitioners of it. I do it, and I know for a fact, Brett Steenbarger, who is one of the great market psychologists extant, he's really an intellectual mentor of mine. He is a cognitive behavioralist. If you go back to his first couple books, this is really, he was sort of treading in the similar waters. He was talking about cognitive behavioral therapy and working with market participants. So it's all, the blueprint for it is all there. It just hasn't been done yet. But I really, really, Robin, I really appreciate you asking me that question. That's a great question. You just pulled it out of the blue. Nobody ever asked me that question before. Thank you.
Took passion to another level on that answer.
Thank you. Thank you. It felt good.
This episode of Invest Well, Be Well is brought to you by Main Management LLC, a pioneer in actively managed ETFs since 2002. Main Management starts with a clear fiduciary focus, delivering the transparency and personal attention you'd expect from a boutique firm. They provide financial advisors with solutions, not products. Main also believes investors should keep more of what they earn, emphasizing net of fee after-tax performance to help clients retain more of their returns. I've known Main Management for years. I've met thousands of managers over the course of my career, and one quality I really value: they invest alongside their clients. They eat their own cooking. Over 10% of the assets they manage are their own partner assets, and more than half of the firm are partners themselves. That says a lot. To learn more about Main strategies, including buy right hedged equity, U.S. sector rotation, thematic innovation, and all asset models, please visit their website at mainmgt.com.
All right. Well, I also want to ask you about discipline. So a lot of what you're talking about requires discipline, right? Getting those routines, those fitness routines, and managing what we eat. So how does cultivating that kind of discipline translate to the markets, or really vice versa?
Well, here's the thing. Discipline is great. Willpower is fantastic. But they are not the things. They're not the things. In fact, they're kind of the opposite of the thing. And here's what I mean by that. When you think of discipline, you think of being very stand-up and very upright. And when you think of willpower, you think of being very clenched and almost rigid. I'm going to clench my teeth and I'm going to get this done. I'm going to really show my willpower. Like I said, there's really nothing wrong with that. But you're never going to get there with just those things. Discipline and willpower will not get you there, especially if you don't have it. In fact, I would submit that the secret is the exact opposite of willpower. It's the exact opposite of clenching. It's the exact opposite of discipline. What I mean by that is that the secret, my secret sauce, when I work with market participants specifically, is I focus not on willpower or discipline. I focus on letting go. Focus on letting go. You let go of a loser. It's very hard to sell losers. I mean, prospect theory, going back to prospect theory, it's funny, that pervades everything with market behavior. Prospect theory, everything goes back to that. It's crazy. We get really aggressive when we're losing, and we get less aggressive when we're winning. And if you study Paul Tudor Jones for like 2 seconds, you know that's exactly the opposite of what we should be doing, right? And so how do we let go? How do we sell losers? How do we learn to sell losers? Well, we start to learn to let go. So I work with people and letting go. And by the way, I came upon that through my own experiences as well. I let go of drinking, and I let go of smoking pot, and I let go of smoking cigarettes, and I let go of eating garbage food all the time. And all of a sudden, I began to realize that I was getting really good at letting go of stuff. And it was like, I sort of think about it, and I haven't written this piece, but I sort of think about it as being a quitting artist. You know, like that's an artistic endeavor. It's something you can't quite, there's a Zen thing to it. There's a non-definable, or maybe I haven't perfectly defined it yet, but this idea of just letting go. This idea of like, you know, you get into an argument with somebody, you just walk away. You're late for an appointment, and instead of speeding up and driving poorly, you just slow down and just sort of accept the fact that you're going to be late for that appointment. You get into a losing trade and you just let it go. And all of the best traders that I know are guys who cut their losers fast. Whether they were born, some of them were born with like abnormal brains, you know? And then most of them learned it through experience, and they had enough cognitive flexibility, which by the way is correlated with metabolic health. Who said when the facts change, I change my position. What do you do good?
John Maynard Keynes.
That was Keynes, right? So that one is just cognitive flexibility. Like you're in a bad trade and you know it's going bad, you just leave. You just walk away. You just sell, And so that to me, it's the opposite of willpower is real, or the becoming a quitting artist, or just letting, like the Buddhists would say, just letting go, just letting something come and letting it go. To me, that is the secret.
Cool. Well, Rob and I have about 5 more questions, but before I forget, I just have to ask a quick one. What does your fitness routine look like today? What are the non-negotiables?
Okay, so right now, I like to pick challenges. I don't like to have a strict protocol. I get very bored. I just wrote about this recently. I went to ChatGPT and I was like, okay, I'm going to run a half marathon in October. And, these are my vitals. This is the last time I ran one. This is how old I am, blah, blah, blah. And it printed out this like every day do a different thing. Hey, today's HIIT Thursday. Hey, Sunday, you're going to do a long run. Hey, Monday, you're going to work out. Hey, Tuesday, you're going to do a 5-mile run. Hey, Wednesday. And I was like, I would die. I would die of boredom and I would puke my guts out if I had to follow that. So I'm very intuitive. I have basic markers. Like I know I need to do a long run every week. I know that's non-negotiable. So Sunday morning, I wake up, go for a long run. This past Sunday morning, I ran 8 miles early in the morning. It felt fantastic. In 2 weeks, I'm going to run 9. In 4 weeks, I'm going to run 10 or something like that. And then the other days of the week, I just do what I feel like doing. Today, I ran 5 miles. I felt great. I ran a little bit faster than I probably should have, but I didn't care because I felt great. Another day, I may just skip a workout. Tomorrow, I don't know. I'm probably going to do a lot of push-ups. So I do a lot of push-ups. I do a lot of pull-ups. I do a lot of running. I mix it up with the running. Some days I go out with my dog early in the morning and we do sprints. It's a lot based on what I feel. So I have a general template and then I go by how I feel. So there's a very intuitive element and I'm very sort of personally anti-protocol. Although with some of my clients, everybody's different. Some people are very sort of orderly and they love a protocol. And with some people, I work on protocols with them and they respond amazing. So it really depends on your personality.
So you've talked about sleep and recovery. That's one of your elements. Can you talk more about why that's so crucial and how that really factors into this idea of fitness alpha?
So we as a culture are very big-brained, right? We're very smart to our own detriment sometimes. Because what we do is we think so much that we lose touch with how we feel, okay? And so we ignore, especially this hyper-successful people, right? We ignore how we feel. So we go out, even though our hamstring is tweaked, we go out and do the hard workout anyway because it's on our protocol or because we feel like we're missing if we don't do it. Mm-hmm. And then we get injured. So for me, rest and sleep are about recuperation. And missing a workout on any one day is well worth it if we're tuned to how we're feeling. And there is a sixth sense that truly exists that nobody ever talks about. And I believe that it is cultural. And I believe that it is related to the fact that we are removed from how we feel and we are so overtuned to our giant frontal lobes, which is where all the big thinking goes on. And that sixth sense is called interoception. And basically, interoception is just a fancy word for how we feel, monitoring how we feel. Are we cold? Are we warm? Are we tired? Are we filled with energy? Are we hungry? This is a huge one, right? Our obesity rate and our metabolic unhealth is through the roof these days in this country, even though we have all the knowledge in the world about our health. And the reason is because we're not paying attention to how we feel. So we know when we're full, but we just don't pay attention to it. And we've not paid attention to it for so long that it's gotten covered over like one of those walls in a 100-year-old house that's been painted 30 times. There was wallpaper under there. And if you start scraping it away, you're going to find an orange and a white and a yellow and a terrible wallpaper of these weird archaic birds. We had that in our own house. We had this bathroom that was that had a terrible paint job. And then underneath the paint job, there was this terrible wallpaper. And it was like we were just excavating. And so tuning into how we feel. We need rest. You wake up with that tweak. You know what? Guess what? You're not going to go run 8 miles that Sunday morning. Maybe you're just going to go for a nice little walk with your wife and your dog and just, get 10, 12,000 steps slowly instead of 25,000 steps the hard way. And then the next day you're going to wake up and you're going to be like, man, I'm glad I took that day off. I feel freaking great now. I'm ready to go. That is, I think, super critical to this, to number 3 of the 4 elements of health: sleep and rest. You listen to your body. When you need to go to bed early, you go to bed early. You need to just rest one day, you rest one day. It's really just tuning in to the sixth sense of interoception.
I love how you keep it simple, which is great, because that leads into my question now, which is, people are feeling overwhelmed, like with their lives, with their jobs, and also, as you've touched on, with information, right? About all this conflicting advice about what to do for our health or our fitness and all of that. So how do you kind of cut through that with people when they are feeling overwhelmed? They don't know where to start. How do you get them going?
Okay, everybody's different. Sometimes I appeal to the future self, right? People who either have grandkids or are about to have grandkids. We talk about future self sometimes. Hey, would you like to dance at your grandkid's wedding one day? Would you like to still be that healthy? And then other times I really focus on the present. But one thing, for purposes of this, one concept that I think has really resonated with people is this idea of priority stacking. Because we take our health, we take arguably the most important thing in the universe, right? When this body's done, we're done. We're worm food. Like, we're all going to go. Like, ask not for whom the bell tolls, right? That's like, 400 or 500 years old? Still true today. We all die. And so we de-emphasize, we deprioritize the most important thing, which is our health. If we want to stay healthy a long time and we want to live a long time, we have to prioritize. And so I think of priorities as a priority stack. And what we're doing now, a lot of us, and it's a very cultural thing, is we are prioritizing our professional lives at the top, and then everything else comes underneath it. And a lot of times with our health, we're just kind of trying to fit it into this incredibly busy schedule, trying to fit it in at the bottom. I've had a million conversations with clients. Well, I got busy with this or I got busy with that, and I really was meaning to do this, but I couldn't. Or, it was a birthday, so, I ate all this garbage food at the restaurant. It was so good, and I had a 4th drink. And, it's like, okay, well, you had you're rich and you have a lot of special events. And last weekend you had a really nice special event dinner then too, and you did the same thing. And so for me, it's like taking that what is really your priority? And taking that, sort of smushing it in at the bottom if we have time, and pulling it out and putting it at the top of the stack. What we put into our bodies, our body movement. And I do this in practice as well. I have a Google Calendar, and on Sunday night or early Monday morning, when I'm sort of looking over my calendar for the week, I take blocks, and it's like, I'm going for a run. I went for a run this morning, and it was right in my calendar. And I put jacuzzi baths in there too. Like, I like to do that a few times a week. And there's evidence that is incredibly healthy for you as well, and contributes to longer health span, actually raises your heart rate, simulates exercise. And so I just put that in. It's non-negotiable for me. Sunday morning, I'm back from an 8-mile or a 10-mile run in time to make my kids breakfast. It's non-negotiable. It's at the top of my priority stack. And then I find everything flows from that. So I'll look at clients' priorities and what they're doing and what they're not doing. And then we look at like a recalibration of that. Hey, dude, these are things that you're not doing that are really catching up with you. And you don't want to be, obese, technically obese by sort of this definition. And you don't want to be winded when you go up steps. Well, and you want to be around for your grand, to dance at your grandkid's wedding. How do we prioritize our lives to address those things?
So I got a question. So is there one book or, I don't know, maybe even one quote you come back to again and again?
Well, if it's a book, it's the Tao Te Ching. And I don't really recommend that to everybody, but all the secrets are in there to me. And that all of these things that we're talking about today are not oppositional. They are all dialectics. They all exist on the same continuum. And us being balanced on that continuum is primary. And that's the Tao Te Ching, right? That's the Tao Te Ching. That's why I use Kendrick Lamar, because I've been thinking about his quote. I'm not on the outside looking in. I'm not on the inside looking out. I'm in the dead fucking center looking around. That's the quote from that song. I love that's, I call him Zendrick Lamar because it's very Zen. That's a very Zen lyric,
That was a great one book. I mean, I'm just
Tao Te Ching.
Yeah, first time somebody's mentioned it. It's cool.
The other one, the quote that I would say is this book called Buddhism for Beginners, where this guy, like all these concepts of Eastern philosophy are very elusive to the Western mind because we were born in this culture and we're very black and white and they're very dialectic. And so one thing that this guy wrote, I forget even the author's name, but he wrote this thing about enlightenment. He said, enlightenment is just rediscovering. Enlightenment is just rediscovering who you are, who you really are. And so when I read that, it hit me like a ton of bricks because I remembered, hey, when I was 13, I was an athlete. And that's who I am. And that's the me that I got away from for like this 25, 30-year period when I got away from myself.
The author is Noah Rasheta.
Boom.
I looked it up. I didn't know off the top. I'll admit it.
Awesome. Well, Phil, this has been such a great conversation. So many takeaways for our listeners. So I really appreciate you coming on. And before you go, can you tell us how can our listeners stay in touch with you and learn more about your work?
Thank you. You can reach me by going to philpearlman.com, PHILPEARLMAN.com. You can find my newsletter there. You can learn about what I do there. You could find my Twitter there. I'm active on Twitter. You could set up a consultation. You could just read more about me and the Pearl Institute.
So Phil, I got one more question, maybe 30 seconds or less, but
good luck with that.
So much
Have I given you any 30-second answer ever? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
That's why I framed it for you because I know you got time constraints, but you've brought so much passion and excitement to this interview. But what is lighting you up these days, either in the markets, your own health, or your own research?
Right now, the thing that's lighting me up is getting faster. I just turned 58. 3 years ago, I ran a half marathon. I was trying to run it in under 2 hours, and I just barely did. It was like 1:59:38 or something. This time I want to do 1:55, and I'm 3 years older, and it's not insignificant 3 years. It's 55 to 58. And I find that everything flows from that. Like what I eat, how I rest, how I lean into my wife and kids. All of that is related. So I really only have one thing that I'm thinking about right now, and that is just running faster. And it's like, it's intertwines with everything. It's all interconnected, and it covers all the bases. It covers like, how am I going to take care of myself today? How am I going to age less than a day in a day? We didn't talk about that one, but I want to age about a half a day every day. With biological and chronological age are two different things. Okay, that was like probably more than 30.
No, that came in at 28 seconds. Would you believe that?
Whoa! Look at me.
I think
First time ever.
Well, Phil, this is awesome. Thank you very much for your time. You're a perfect guest for this podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, you guys. It was a real treat, and so much respect and love.
Thank you. This podcast is hosted by Rusty Vanneman and Robin Murray and produced by Garrett Crosby. Well, we'll be back next week. Thanks for listening to Invest Well, Be Well, and hey, if you like this episode, don't forget to subscribe.
If you have feedback, guest suggestions, or just want to connect, please visit my website, rustysbridge.com, or email me directly at rusty@rustysbridge.com. Until next time, invest well and be well.